Om Gyan Timirandasya Gyan Chalakaya Chakshurul Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Ram then went to Lakshman and with great anguish told Shushena, "Just by looking at my wounded brother, my strength immediately withers. Without Lakshman, victory will have no meaning for me. If he dies, I shall follow him, just as he followed me when I was exiled to the forest." With a reassuring voice, Shushena replied, "O Ram, Lakshman is not dying. His facial luster has not faded, and his eyes are still sparkling brightly. However, Hanuman must immediately be dispatched to the Mahodaya mountain to collect the herbs called Vishalyakarani, Savarnyakarani, Samjivakarani, and Samadhani. By this medicinal treatment, Lakshman can immediately be restored to perfect health." Hanuman again leaped to the Himalayas. However, arriving at Mahodaya mountain, he could not recognize the necessary herbs. In frustration, he again tore off the mountain peak, and while holding it in both hands, returned to Lanka. Placing the mountain peak near Shushan, Hanuman lay down for a moment to rest, saying, "I could not recognize which herbs to bring, so I decided to carry the entire mountain here." Shushan praised Hanuman and then went to look for the proper herbs. Thereafter, he crushed the herbs into powder, and when Lakshman was given them to smell, his wounds instantly became healed. As Lakshman stood up, Ram embraced him firmly, saying, "It is my good fortune that you are well, O Lakshman. Without you, there would be no use in recovering Sita or even maintaining my life any longer." Lakshman replied, "My dear brother, please do not indulge in such grief any longer. Quickly make good your vow to kill Ravan and install Vibhishana as king of Lanka." Meanwhile, Ravan mounted another chariot and rushed out from the city, eager to fight with Ram. Ram took up his bow and released a downpour of arrows upon Ravan. However, from the sky, the demigods exclaimed, "This battle is not being fairly fought. Ram is standing on the ground while Ravan rides in a chariot." Taking this cue, Indra called to Matali and ordered him to take his chariot to Ram on the battlefield. Matali thus came before Ram, driving Indra's golden chariot, which was drawn by 1,000 greenish horses. The celestial charioteer then announced to Ram, "My dear lord, King Indra requests you to kindly accept this chariot for fighting Ravana. Inside you will find Indra's bow and armor, along with an incomparable spear and various celestial arrows. O Ram, please mount the chariot at once, for the demigods are most disturbed to see you fight standing on the ground." After circumambulating Indra's chariot, Ram mounted it, and a thrilling duel ensued. When Ravan released a Gandharva weapon, Ram quickly neutralized it with another Gandharva weapon. Next, Ravan discharged a Rakshasa weapon that took the form of innumerable serpents with blazing, wide-open mouths. In response, Ram released a Garuda weapon that transformed into countless eagles that quickly ate up all of Ravan's snake arrows. This enraged the Rakshasa king, who then rapidly discharged 1,000 arrows at Ram. He also shot numerous arrows that hit Matuli, a single arrow that knocked down Indra's flag, and many more that afflicted the horses. Ravan was putting Ram in great difficulty, and the demigods and monkey warriors became quite anxious. Rama then assumed a most frightening, angry form, causing the entire earth, with its mountains and oceans, to quake. Many evil omens manifested, and all created beings, including Ravan, became afraid. Numerous demons suddenly appeared in the sky to cheer Ravan toward victory. As if in response, Ravan picked up a fearsome dart and rode so ferociously that heaven and earth began to tremble. Then he shouted, "Ram, prepare yourself, for you shall now die." Ravan hurled the lethal dart, soaring through the sky, and made a loud roaring noise, and was encircled by lightning. Ram released innumerable arrows to counteract Ravan's awesome weapon, just as Indra tries to stop the fire of devastation by pouring down torrential rains. When Ram saw all his arrows being consumed by the fearsome dart, he picked up the celebrated spear of Indra and hurled it. Soaring through the air, Indra's spear illuminated all directions, then collided with Ravan's dart, shattering it to pieces that fell harmlessly to the ground. Ram then punctured Ravan's chest, forehead, and horses with arrows. Although Ravan was exhausted and blood flowed from wounds all over his body, he continued to storm arrows upon Ram in great anger. Indeed, Ravan riddled Ram's chest with 1,000 arrows that covered him with blood. The constant hail of arrows was so dense that Ram and Ravan could no longer see each other clearly because of the darkness it produced. Still, Ram remained undaunted. Laughing disdainfully, he rebuked Ravan, saying, "You are the most abominable of the man-eaters. Indeed, you are like their stool. O kidnapper of Sita, you are a first-class fool for considering yourself a great hero. Actually, you are a great coward, for you dared to take my wife after deceptively luring me far away. How can you be proud of overpowering a poor defenseless woman in the absence of her husband? You resemble a dog, for as a dog steals eatables from the kitchen in the absence of the householder, in my absence you kidnap my wife Sita. Therefore, as Yamaraj punishes sinful men, I shall also punish you. You are most abominable, sinful, and shameless. Today, therefore, I, whose attempt never fails, shall punish you. O Ravan, today you will meet your deserved end. The body you are so attached to will become food for jackals and vultures." Thereafter, Ram began to fire his arrows with redoubled energy and greater dexterity. This assault was combined with volleys of stones hurled by the monkeys. Ravan became so dazed that he could no longer take up and properly discharge his weapons. Seeing his master's death near at hand, Ravan's charioteer drove him swiftly away from the battlefield, beyond the reach of Ram's arrows. The charioteer then said, "O king, I took you away from the fighting only for your welfare. You appeared to have lost all your strength and your horses were exhausted. Many inauspicious omens were visible, so I did what I considered to be my foremost duty." Ravan became pacified by his driver's words, and then ordered, "Go quickly to where Ram is." Once Ravan makes up his mind, he does not turn back until he has completely vanquished his enemies. In Ravan's absence, Agastya Rishi came before Ram, knowing him to be greatly fatigued from the fighting. After being properly honored and welcomed, Agastya said, "My dear Lord Ram, kindly receive from me the Aditya Hridaya prayer meant for satisfying the sun god. This mantra bestows great blessing and cleanses all sins. One who chants this hymn prolongs his life and remains always fixed on the eternal path of religion. The mantra is as follows. Anshu, would you like to continue reading?
Yes. O presiding deity of the sun, I offer my obeisances unto you. You are the chief of all the demigods because of your unlimited effulgence, which maintains the entire universe. Indeed, both demigods and demons worship you for their ultimate welfare. You are the reservoir of all universal energy and the source of life for all beings. As such, you perfectly represent the Supreme Lord, Vishnu, as his empowered expansion. Men who are knowers of the Vedas, therefore, worship you as Lord Narayan, situated within the sun, by chanting suitable prayers 3 times daily. It is you alone who destroy the dense darkness of this universe, and thus I bow down unto you, O splendorous one. Again and again I offer my obeisances unto you, O eye of the Supreme Lord, and witness of the world's activities. Agastya Rishi concluded, O Ram, if you recite this mantra while worshipping the sun god, then you will certainly be able to conquer your enemy. Anyone who is in difficulty and worships Surya with this prayer never comes to grief. Agastya then left. Ram already felt rejuvenated, and thereafter he sipped water 3 times while uttering the holy names of the Lord. Then, with his gaze fixed upon the sun, Ram recited the Aditya Hridaya prayer and experienced great transcendental bliss. As Ram again took up his bow and advanced towards Ravan, Surya spoke to him from the sky, urging, "Do not delay, go quickly." Ram then ordered, "O Matali, drive quickly to where Ravan is staying, but do so with great caution." Remembering that he was speaking to Indra's charioteer, Ram became embarrassed and apologized, saying, "I am sorry to have instructed you as if I were your master. I am simply eager to kill Ravan, and hope you will excuse my offense." Matali was touched by Ram's display of humility, and soon brought Indra's chariot close to Ravan's side. Ram and Ravan then exchanged arrows, and the fighting again became fierce. Evil omens came into view, foreboding the destruction of the Rakshasa king. Clouds rained blood upon Ravan's chariot, and a flock of vultures followed behind them. A huge meteor then fell close by, causing all the Rakshasas to become despondent, convinced that Ravan would soon die. Conversely, pleasing signs appeared before Ram, indicating that victory would soon be his. Thereafter, Ram and Ravan exhibited the entire wealth of their prowess. The competition became so intense that the armies were stunned with amazement. Indeed, the soldiers stood motionless like paintings. They were so absorbed in watching the fight that they did not even think of attacking each other. When Ravan tried to cut Indra's flag, Ram deflected his arrows with his own. Determined to match Ravan blow for blow, Ram knocked down the Rakshasa king's flag. Next, Ravan shot Indra's horses, but when the celestial seeds did not even stagger, Ravan became frustrated. Ravan resorted to using his Rakshasa powers of illusion to shoot forth clubs, discs, trees, and mountain peaks. Ram counteracted all these weapons before they reached his chariot, causing them to fall upon the monkey army. Both Ram and Ravan continued to dispatch thousands of arrows at each other, and as they collided in the sky, the shafts fell down onto the battlefield. In this way, the fighting continued for nearly 1 hour, as Ram matched Ravan blow for blow. As all created beings looked on, their minds were filled with wonder. Both chariot drivers also displayed great skill, but then, as the chariots came side by side, Ram forced Ravan's 4 horses to turn away by cutting them with 4 arrows. This increased Ravan's anger, and he repeatedly assailed Ram with his arrows in retaliation. Ram remained undisturbed. Thus, the exchange of weapons became so feverish that the fighting was unparalleled in the history of warfare. Sometimes Ravan displayed his 10-headed feature, and at others he appeared in his normal persona, with only one head. Suddenly, Ram severed Ravan's head with an arrow. However, as the severed head fell to the ground, a duplicate miraculously appeared in its place. Ram then severed that head, but another replaced it too. Again and again, Ram continued to sever Ravan's heads, until 100 of Ravan's heads had fallen on the battlefield. Each time a new head appeared in place of the old one. Ram wondered, with these arrows I previously killed Maricha, Kara, and Viradha. I pierced 7 mighty trees and slayed the invincible Vali. These arrows have humbled great mountains and agitated the fathomless ocean. How is it that they are now ineffectual against Ravan? The duel thus continued at a fierce pace, both combatants obsessed with killing the other. Indeed, several days and nights passed without a gap in the fighting. Finally, when Matali saw that Ram was not gaining in his desired victory, he inquired, "Why are you only fighting in a defensive manner? My lord, are you not aware of your limitless potencies? The hour of doom has now arrived for the king of the Rakshasas. Why do you not employ the divine Brahmastra?" Reminded of his ultimate weapon, Ram took up the arrow that Agastya Rishi had formerly given him at the time of their meeting in the Dandakaranya forest. Lord Brahma had personally created this arrow for Indra's use, and later it was presented to Agastya. The feathers of the wonderful arrow were supplied by Garuda and presided over by Vayu. The razor-sharp head was created with the combined energy of the fire god, Agni, and the sun god, Surya. Mount Meru and Mount Mandara contributed their gravity, becoming the arrow's weight, and its shaft was made from a subtle, ethereal element. The wonderful Brahmastra arrow was omnipotent and infallible, and its dazzling effulgence rivaled the sun's. Empowering the arrow with the required mantras, Ram placed the terrible Brahmastra upon his bowstring. While gazing upon the flaming arrow, the monkeys became filled with delight, while dread penetrated the hearts of the Rakshasas. As Ram pulled the bowstring back to his ear, the earth began to shudder, and the heavens appeared to be thrown into confusion. At last, when Ram released the Brahmastra, it sped through the air like death itself, striking violently the chest of the Rakshasa king. Piercing through Ravan's heart like a thunderbolt, the fierce arrow then entered into the earth, taking Ravan's sinful life along with it. Then, as the wonderful Brahmastra re-entered Ram's quiver, Ravan dropped his bow from his hand. Vomiting blood from his 10 mouths, he fell down dead upon the ground. Upon seeing this, Ravan's followers raised a tumultuous sound, crying, "Alas, alas, what has happened? What has happened?" With great transcendental ecstasy, the monkey warriors loudly proclaimed Ram's victory and pursued the fleeing Rakshasa army. From the sky, the demigods shouted, "Well done, excellent," as they covered Ram's chariot with showers of flowers and beat upon celestial drums. With Ravan dead, the rishis and the demigods felt blessed, relief, and peace of mind that they had not enjoyed for a very long time. A gentle, cool, fragrant breeze then began to blow, and the sun serenely spread its rays, so that happiness appeared to pervade all directions. Sugriv, Angada, Vibhishana, and Lakshman were the first to come and pay homage to Ram. However, when Vibhishan saw his elder brother laying dead on the battlefield, he broke down and cried in an outburst of grief. Meanwhile, news of Ravan's death spread throughout the inner apartments of the royal palace. All of Ravan's wives came out of the city to the battlefield, their hair disheveled and ornaments in disarray. The ladies approached the dead body of their husband, wailing loudly. Overcome with unbearable grief, some of the women rolled in the dust, while others embraced different parts of Ravan's body. Crying out, "O Lord, O my husband," one of the ladies hung around Ravan's neck, while others clutched at his feet, rubbed his wounded chest, and threw their arms up in despair. Others fainted away, unable to bear the grief.
Amidst the sounds of loud wailing, they could be heard lamenting. "O dear husband, by ignoring our good advice and that of Vibhishan, you have brought about your own destruction. Now that you are dead, we too are vanquished. For the wife has no other support than the husband. This is the inevitable end. However, for such a cruel and hard-hearted person like you, who else would have dared to kidnap Sita and keep her against her will?" Ravana's favorite queen, Mandodari, then lamented, "O my lord, O master, you epitomized trouble for others, and therefore you were called Ravan. But now that you have been defeated, we are also defeated. For without you, the state of Lanka has been conquered by the enemy. To whom will it go for shelter? My dear husband, although you were so powerful, you could not stand before Lord Ram. You were too confident of your acquired prowess. Thus, you became a great burden to the earth. You could not understand that Lord Vishnu himself has descended upon the earth as Lord Ram to relieve that burden. O Ravan, your sinful passion for Sita has become the cause of destruction for all Rakshasas. You always masqueraded as a hero, yet you were proven to be a coward when you deceitfully kidnapped Sita. You came under the influence of lusty desires, and therefore you could not understand the influence of Mother Sita. Now, because of her curse, you have been reduced to this state, having been killed by Lord Ramchandra. O pleasure of the Rakshas dynasty, because of you, the state of Lanka, and also we ourselves, now have no protector. By your deeds, you have made your body fit to be eaten by vultures, and your soul fit to go to hell. But even though your character was abominable, I do not see how I will go on living in your absence." Finally, Mandodari fainted, with her head against Ravan's chest. Then her co-wives lifted her up and revived her to her consciousness. Ram then ordered Vibhishan, "Begin the funeral rites for your brother, without further delay. It will only be possible to comfort Ravan's widows after his body has been cremated." Vibhishan replied, "I do not wish to perform the funeral ceremonies for a man who kidnapped the wives of others, who is merciless and tyrannical, and who is inclined towards irreligion. Since he was my elder brother, it is my duty to respect Ravan. But at the same time, his actions were those of an enemy, and thus he does not deserve my worship." Ram then said, "I approve of your words, because they uphold the cause of virtue. Still, I want you to cremate the body of your brother. Regardless of his faults, all hostilities have now ended." Vibhishan then went to Lanka to make preparations for Ravan's funeral. After bringing his maternal grandfather, Malyavan, Vibhishan placed the body of Ravan upon the funeral carrier and proceeded with numerous other Rakshasas, carrying the firewood. Going toward the south, the party arrived at a consecrated place, where they cremated Ravan's body according to Vedic injunctions. Thereafter, Ravan's wives were consoled and everyone returned to Lanka. Having given up his transcendental anger, Ram assumed a gentle countenance and laid aside his bow, our arrows, and armor. With the fighting concluded, the demigods left the sky overhead and went back to their abodes. While going, they chanted the glories of Lord Ram with great satisfaction. Then after, receiving due honor from Ram and permission to depart, Matali ascended into the sky upon Indra's chariot and returned to the heavenly kingdom. Returning to his military camp, Ram ordered Lakshman to perform the installation ceremony for Vibhishan. In turn, Lakshman gave golden vessels to the chief monkeys and ordered them to quickly fetch water from the four seas. Lakshman performed the installation ceremony, strictly according to Vedic injunctions. All of Lanka's citizens came to the sacrificial arena with presentations of auspicious articles. After receiving these gifts, Vibhishan offered them to Ram. Ram then told Hanuman, "Please go and find out how Sita is. Inform her that I have killed Ravan and return here with any message she may have for me." Hanuman then went to the Ashoka grove and found the grief-stricken Sita, still surrounded by hideous Rakshasis. Standing meekly before her, Hanuman said, "Your husband has sent me here, to give you the following message. After many sleepless months, I have fulfilled my vow to rescue you. Now that your oppressor, the king of the Rakshasas, is dead, you may give up your anxiety." Hearing the news of Ravan's death and Ram's well-being, Sita became so overwhelmed with joy that she could not speak for some time. When Hanuman asked her why she did not make any reply, Sita said, "I can hardly speak because I am so elated, O Hanuman. What you have told me is unlimitedly more valuable than any amount of gold or jewels." With folded hands, Hanuman suggested, "If you so desire, I can kill all of these hideous Rakshasas who have tortured you for so long. Indeed, I would take great pleasure in avenging all the suffering you have had to undergo. I simply wait for your permission." The compassionate Sita replied, "There are only foolish maidservants who were compelled to carry out the orders of their king. Whatever I have suffered was due to my own past misdeeds. These Rakshasi women only acted as instruments in the hands of destiny. O Hanuman, perhaps you have heard this. A great man never takes into account the offenses that are committed against him by another person. Indeed, he vows at all costs not to return evil with evil. Once, there was a hunter who was being chased by a tiger. While trying to escape, he climbed up into a big tree. However, high up in the branches of the tree, a bear was perched, relaxing. Upon seeing the bear, the tiger called to him, saying, "This hunter is our common enemy. You should push him out of the tree, so that I can eat him." The bear, however, replied, "Because this hunter has taken shelter of my home, I will not do anything to harm him. To do so would be unrighteous." Saying this, the bear went to sleep. The tiger then said to the hunter, "If you push the bear out of the tree so that I can eat him, I will promise not to harm you." Swayed by the tiger's words, the hunter pushed the sleeping bear. However, as he was falling, the bear grabbed another branch and saved himself. The tiger said to the bear, "Since this hunter tried to kill you, you should retaliate by pushing him out of the tree." But even though the tiger appealed to the bear like this repeatedly, the bear refused, saying, "A great person never takes into account the sins of a person who has offended him. Instead, at all costs, he keeps his vow never to return evil for evil, knowing that good conduct is the ornament of all virtuous persons." Being thus admonished, Hanuman asked Sita if she had a message to give Ram. She replied, My only words are this: I long to see my dear husband, who is known to be always very affectionate for his unalloyed devotees.
Hanuman said, "Be assured that you will see Ram and Lakshman this very day. Please allow me to leave so that I may deliver your message without delay." Hanuman returned to Ram and related Sita's message. He urged Ram to meet with Sita, saying, "Because Sita has suffered so much, always longing to see you, please go to the Ashoka grave at once." When Ram heard this appeal, tears came to his eyes. Then his eyes cast down. He ordered Vibhishana, "Let Sita be brought before me after bathing, dressing, and adorning herself with celestial ornaments." Vibhishan then went to the Ashoka grave and through the Rakshasi made his presence known to Sita. Humbly approaching her, Vibhishan said, "Ram desires to see you. Please mount this palanquin I have brought. Ram asks that you suitably prepare yourself by bathing, dressing, and adorning yourself with celestial ornaments." Sita then went to bathe, and after dressing herself nicely, she was placed upon the palanquin and brought before Ram. When Vibhishana first approached Ram, he saw the Lord's head was bent low, as if he were absorbed in thought. Vibhishan then announced Sita's arrival. Ram requested she be brought before him at once. Out of natural curiosity, hordes of monkeys had come to catch a glimpse of Sita. However, Vibhishan and his assistants began pushing them back, and there arose a great commotion. Because of strong affection for his servitors, Ram became annoyed by seeing this, and told Vibhishan, "Do not harass these monkeys. There is nothing wrong if a chaste woman is seen in public during a time of adversity or war, at a swayamvar, at sacrifices, or a wedding. Therefore, please allow the monkeys to see Sita if they so desire." Ram then ordered, "Let Sita come down from the palanquin and come before me on foot." As Vibhishan escorted Sita, the monkey chiefs could understand that Ram was in an angry mood. They were surprised not only that Ram was upset, but he was making Sita walk in public view, his manner stern and grave. Sita approached Ram with great shyness, seeming to shrink into herself. Then, when Sita saw the moon-like handsome face of her beloved husband, her miseries immediately disappeared, causing her natural shining effulgence to return. Sita was exceedingly happy to see her beloved, and her lotus-like mouth showed her joy. But Ram was in a different mood. Ram's heart was tormented by fear of a public scandal. Therefore, he addressed Sita in an angry tone. "I have fulfilled my vow to win you back, and thus avenge Ravan's insult to my honor. However, you should understand that my great endeavor to kill the Rakshas king was not really for your sake, but to vindicate my good name and the reputation of the Ikshvaku dynasty. In truth, your appearance before me is not at all pleasing. Thus, I now grant you leave to go wherever you desire. No cultured man will accept a wife who has been embraced by another, or who has dwelt in the house of someone else for so long. I am sure that no woman could have remained with Ravan for such a long time without being enjoyed by him. Ravan was obsessed by lust for you. How could he have controlled himself and refrained from ravishing you by force? By killing Ravan, I have regained my honor. However, there is no need to have any more attachment for you. You are now free to do as you like. Fix your mind upon Lakshman, Bharat, or anyone else you choose." As Sita heard Ram's speech, her hair stood on end, and her head bent low in shame. Since before she had only heard loving words from her husband, Ram's words entered her heart like sharp arrows. She began to weep bitterly. Since she was in the presence of innumerable witnesses, it was difficult for her to endure her husband's reproaches. Then, wiping tears from her eyes, Sita replied in a faltering voice, "How can you dare speak about me in such an irresponsible manner? Never for a moment have I given up my chastity, either by body, mind, or words. My character is pure. You should not judge me as though I were an ordinary woman. Although I am called Janaki, the daughter of King Janak, my birth was transcendental, for I appeared from the earth itself. O Ram, if it was your plan all along to cruelly reject me in this way, why didn't you inform me when Hanuman came as your messenger? If I knew that you did not intend to take me back, I would have immediately given up my life, thus avoiding many months of unbearable pain. Likewise, you could have avoided the ghastly war that has taken the lives of countless Rakshasas and monkeys. What was the need of demanding so much service from your allies? O Ram, why are you acting like this? Does my pure devotion to you mean nothing? Sita then addressed Lakshman, saying, "Please build a large fire for me to enter. This is the only path that remains for one who has been rejected by her husband in public." Suppressing his agitation, Lakshman looked at Ram and saw that his elder brother approved of Sita's words. Thus, Lakshman went to prepare the fire. Ram appeared so stern and intense that no one dared to even speak to him, what to speak of pacifying him. When the fire was built and blazed up brightly, Sita circumambulated Ram. Then, coming before the fire with folded hands, Sita bowed to the Brahmanas and demigods. Next, Sita aloud offered a prayer to Agni. "O God of fire, because my heart has never turned away from Ram, please grant, please grant me protection. Although I have never been unfaithful to Ram in thought, word, or deed, he accuses me of being polluted. Therefore, O God of fire, seer of all within the three worlds, I request you to become the witness of my purity." Saying this, Sita circumambulated the fire. Then, as a huge crowd looked on in wonder, Sita entered into the flames with a fearless mind. Within the blazing fire, Sita, who was adorned with dazzling gold ornaments, shone with wonderful golden effulgence. As soon as Sita entered the fire, all the women present screamed with horror, and a cry of anguish rose from the assembled monkeys and Rakshasas. In the midst of the great wailing, Ram appeared to become thoughtful. Meanwhile, the chief demigods appeared before him, riding upon their celestial vehicles. As Ram stood before them with folded hands, the demigods, headed by Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, said, "O Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Ramachandra, we are, we are very pained to see how you are neglecting your eternal consort, Mother Sita. You are the creator of the universe and the Lord of all demigods. Why do you ignore your divinity and reject Sita as though you were a common man?" Ram then replied, I consider myself to be an ordinary human being, the son of Maharaj Dashrath. However, if there is something more to be said, then perhaps you, Lord Brahma, can disclose it to me." Lord Brahma said, "My dear Lord Ram, you are directly Lord Narayan himself, and thus you are identical with all the forms of Narayan. You are a plenary expansion of Lord Sri Krishna, the original Supreme Personality of Godhead. You are the cause of all causes. You are the universal form and the support of the cosmic manifestation. All the demigods are your parts and parcels and your eternal servants. Moreover, Sita is none other than Lakshmi herself, the supreme goddess of fortune. Both of you have appeared on the earth to destroy Ravan. Now that this mission has been accomplished, O Lord, you may return to your transcendental abode in the spiritual sky after ruling over the earth for as long as you desire." Manya, would you like to read next?
Yes. As soon as Lord Brahma finished speaking, the fire god Agni emerged from the flames with Sita. As Agni presented Sita before Ram, everyone could see how her body, bright red dress, ornaments, and hair showed no sign of being even slightly burned. In his capacity as a universal witness, Agni announced, "O Ram, here's your dear wife, Sita. She is devoid of even the smallest tinge of sin. Sita was never the slightest bit unfaithful to you by mind, word, or glance. What to speak of any action? Therefore, my dear Ram, you must accept Sita without reservation, giving up your harsh words and demeanor." Ram was pleased to hear Agni's testimony, and as tears of joy fell from his eyes, he replied, "O Agni, it was necessary for Sita to undergo this trial by fire, just to convince the masses of her spotless purity. If I had prevented her from entering the fire, people would have criticized me for accepting her without first proving her chastity. They would have concluded that I was simply motivated by lust. In truth, I already knew of Sita's chastity, and that Ravan could never pollute her. She is always fully protected by the power of her righteousness. It was only to prove Sita's chastity to the world that I appeared to neglect her. Indeed, Sita is not different from me, for she is directly my eternal potency. Just as sunlight, being non-different from the sun, is inseparable from the sun, so too there is no possibility of my being separated from Sita. Srila Prabhupada explains and comments, it was actually impossible for Ravana to take away Sita. The form of Sita taken by Raman was an illusory representation of Mother Sita, Maya Sita. When Sita was tested in the fire, this Maya Sita was burnt, and the real Sita came out of the fire. A further understanding to be derived from this example is that a woman, however powerful she may be in the material world, must be given protection. For as soon as she is unprotected, she will be exploited by the Rakshasas like Ravana. Before Mother Sita was married to Lord Ramachandra, she was protected by her father, and when she was married, she was protected by her husband. Therefore, the conclusion is that a woman should always be protected. According to the Vedic rule, there's no scope for a woman's being independent, for a woman cannot protect herself independently. Ram felt great transcendental bliss in being reunited with Sita. His pastimes are all manifestations of his internal potency, enacted for the purpose of relishing spiritual exchanges. Lord Shiva then embraced Ram, saying, "My dear Lord, by slaying the incomparably powerful Ravan, you have performed a wonderful feat that will be glorified throughout the three worlds until the time of dissolution." Pointing to the sky, Lord Shiva said, "O Ram, see how your father is waiting there, seated upon his celestial chariot. Having been delivered by your mercy, he now resides on Indra's planet. Go quickly with Lakshman and be reunited with Maharaj Dashrath, for he has come here just to see you." Ram and Lakshman went and bowed down before their father. Feeling extremely delighted, Maharaj Dashrath took Ram upon his lap and said, "My residence in heaven does not give me any real pleasure. O Ram, only now that I am able to see you do I feel happy." All along, Kaikai's words demanding your exile remained imprinted upon my heart. Only now that your period of banishment has come to an end do I feel somewhat relieved. However, I still yearn to see you return to Ayodhya and be installed as Emperor of the world after being reunited with Bharat. I can now understand that you are the Supreme Lord Vishnu himself, and that you have descended upon the earth just to vanquish Ravana. Ram replied, "My dear father, I too feel greatly relieved that my exile has come to an end, and my mission is accomplished. However, I have one request to make of you. Please withdraw your harsh words spoken at the time of my banishment, disowning Kaikai and Bharata." Maharaj Dashrath readily consented, saying, "Let it be so." He then fondly embraced Lakshman and declared, "My dear son, because of the dedicated service you have rendered to Ram, I am eternally indebted to you. Please know that your elder brother is directly the Supreme Personality of Godhead, appearing in human form for the welfare of the world. He is worshipable even by the greatest of demigods, what to speak of ourselves. Lord Dasharatha then told Sita, "Please bear no grudge toward Ram for having tested your purity. Know that your remarkable behavior will earn you a place in history as the most glorious woman the world has ever seen." Having thus spoken, Maharaj Dashrath mounted his celestial chariot and ascended towards heaven. As Ram stood with folded hands, Indra said, "My audience can never go in vain. Thus, I wish for you to take a benediction from me." Ram was pleased to hear Indra's statement and thus requested, "O King of the Celestials, please bring back to life all the monkey warriors who died in my service. Additionally, let all the trees in the places where these heroes dwell become full of fruits, even when out of season." Indra replied, "Although this boon is very difficult, even for me to grant, I shall happily do so." Just then, all the monkeys who had died in the battle began to rise up from the ground, their wounds completely healed. It seemed to them as if they were awakening from a long sleep. However, when they saw Ram and all the demigods before them, the monkeys could understand they had got back their lost lives, and thus felt supremely delighted. Indra then departed, followed by the demigods, while Ram and the monkeys spent the night in that place. The next morning, Vibhishana came before Ram with numerous maidservants, carrying paraphernalia for his bath. However, Ram ordered, "My dear Vibhishana, summon all the monkeys headed by Sugriva. Let them enjoy this royal luxury. As long as I am separated from Bharata, who's practicing severe austerities on... Okay. Wait, I think I have to go back. Oh wait, okay, found it. As long as I'm separated from Bharata, who's practicing severe austerities on my behalf, such opulence does not appeal to me. My only request is that you arrange for my speedy passage back to Ayodhya. Indeed, the travel there by foot would be an arduous journey." Vibhishana replied, "If you will ride in the Pushpaka chariot, you can reach Ayodhya this very day. However, I humbly request that yourself, Sita, and Lakshman remain here for some time with the army of monkeys, so I may royally entertain everyone before your departure." Ram said, "I certainly cannot refuse your hospitality. However, I am growing increasingly anxious to meet Bharata, Kaushalya, and my stepmothers. Therefore, I beg you to permit me to depart without delay." Vibhishana went quickly and brought Ram the Pushpaka chariot. This wonderful chariot originally belonged to Kivira before Ravan stole it from him. The chariot was constructed from gold by Vishwakarma with seats of gems. The wonderful spaceship could travel anywhere, following the mental indication of its driver. Thus, when Ram and Lakshmana saw the chariot hovering before them, awaiting their command, they were quite astonished. Before departing, Ram requested Vibhishana to present gifts of gold and jewels to all the monkey soldiers. Then Ram mounted the Pushpaka chariot with Sita and Lakshmana. Addressing the assembly, Ram said, "My dear monkey warriors, there's no way I can repay you for your heroic fighting on my behalf. Your unflinching devotional service will always serve as an inspiration for future devotees. Thus, your glories will forever shine brightly. Now, please return to Kishkindya to live there happily under Sugriva's leadership. Vibhishana, you should accept responsibility for ruling over Lanka immediately, since the citizens are now bereft of their king." Then, standing before Ram with folded hands, Sugriva and Vibhishana pleaded, "O Lord, please allow us to accompany you to Ayodhya. After seeing the coronation ceremonies, we shall return home." Ram replied, "Nothing would please me more than to return to Ayodhya with all of my dear friends. Therefore, you and all the other monkey heroes can board the Pushpaka chariot, and we will embark immediately." Niharika, would you like to read?
Yes. Finally, after All were comfortably seated. The Pushpaka chariot rose majestically into the air. While all the monkeys and bears were enjoying the flight, Ram pointed out the sights to Sita. Look there at the battlefield where all the heroic Rakshasas lay dead, all killed for your sake. Look, there is where Ravana fell. There is the spot where Kumbhakarna was slain. There is where Indrajit was defeated. And there is where Prahasta died. Over there, there is a bridge called Nalasetu, by which we cross the ocean to Lanka. There, on the far shore, is the place called Setubandha, Rameshwaram, where the bridge construction began. From this time onward, Setubandha will be a most sacred place, capable of washing away all of one's accumulated sinful reactions. Then, as Ram pointed to Kishkinda, Sita said, I would be pleased if I could return to Ayodhya in the company of the wives of the monkey chiefs. Happy to grant Sita's request, the chariot halted as Ram instructed Sugriva and the other warriors to quickly bring their wives. When everyone was seated, their journey continued. Rama pointed out to Sita, there is Mount Rishyamukha, where I met Sugriva, and nearby you can see heavenly Lake Pampa, which abounds the bluish lotus flowers. There you can see the river Godavari, and on its banks is the ashram of Agastya Rishi. O Sita, there is the spot where Ravana kidnapped you. There is Chitrakuta, where Bharata came to meet me. Over there is the river Yamuna, and there is the mighty Ganga, where King Guha's capital lies on the river's banks. In this way, Ram, Sita, and Lakshman's entire forest life was displayed in reverse order as they retraced their way back to Ayodhya. Finally, the river Sarayu came into view, and at last the outskirts of Ayodhya. Before entering the city, however, Ram stopped at the ashrama of Bharadwaja Rishi to inquire about his relatives' welfare before meeting them. After happily welcoming Ram, Bharadwaja replied to his inquiries, saying, in your absence, Bharata has been living a life of severe renunciation, wearing deerskin and tree bark, and keeping matted hair. He has been ruling the kingdom as your subordinate by keeping your shoes on the royal throne. O Rama, by dint of my mystic power, I know that you have removed the burden of the earth. Therefore, I would be pleased to award any benediction you desire. Ram happily replied, let all of the trees along the way to Ayodhya become filled with fruits and flowers. Let streams of honey flow down from the trees, exuding the fragrance of nectar. As soon as his words were spoken, the trees along the way to Ayodhya immediately filled up with sumptuous fruit. Seeing this miraculous transformation, thousands of monkeys quickly jumped down from the Pushpaka chariot and began feasting to their full satisfaction. Ram was always thinking of how he could reward the monkeys for their selfless service. Thus, it pleased him to see them satisfied in this manner. Turning to Hanuman, Ram said, please inform Guha of my arrival. Then go to Nandigrama and describe to Bharata all the events concerning Sita's abduction and her subsequent recovery. Watch carefully the expression on Bharata's face and when he hears of my arrival. Then report back to me before we depart from this ashram. If Bharata wishes to rule the kingdom himself, whether due to attachment for position, power, or royal luxury, or even from Kaikeyi's urging, I will be happy to allow him to do so. Hanuman took a human form and departed, traveling through the air. He first informed Guha that Rama would come to meet him after spending the night at Bharadwaja's ashram. Upon his arrival at Nandigram, Hanuman saw Bharat dressed in tree bark and wearing matted hair. Bharata was living in a small cottage, subsisting only on fruits and roots, and he appeared to be very miserable and emaciated. Hanuman then approached Bharat, announcing, I have come as a messenger from Ram. He inquires about your welfare and wishes to inform you that he will soon return to Ayodhya. When he heard these glorious words, Bharata's face immediately lit up with great delight. Then, becoming exhilarated with transcendental emotion, he fainted to the ground. Upon coming to his senses, Bharata stood up and embraced Hanuman with great satisfaction. Then, while bathing Hanuman with torrents of tears, Bharat said, "Because you have brought me this good news, I shall immediately reward you with 100,000 cows, 100 villages, and 16 virgin girls to marry. Now, please sit down and tell me everything that happened during Ram's exile." Once Hanuman had finished telling Bharata everything of Rama's exile up to the point of his imminent return, Bharata exclaimed, "My long-cherished wish has finally been fulfilled." Bharat then ordered Shatrughna to make all arrangements for Ram's reception. Thus, Sumantra and the other ministers soon arrived at Nandigram, riding elephants. Kaushalya, Sumitra, and Kaikeyi then arrived on palanquins, while engineers hurriedly constructed a new road connecting Nandigram with Ayodhya. After all arrangements had been made, Bharata picked up Rama's sandals, a white royal umbrella, and chamaras. Then, accompanied by many brahmanas, he left his cottage amidst the blowing of conch shells and the beating of drums. The news of Rama's arrival had spread instantly, and almost the entire population of Ayodhya came to Nandigram, hoping to see him. Bharat was accompanied by his ministers, priests, and other respectable citizens, by professional musicians vibrating pleasing musical sounds, and by learned brahmanas loudly chanting the Vedic hymns. Following the procession were chariots drawn by beautiful horses with harnesses of golden rope. These chariots were decorated by flags and with golden embroidery, and by other flags of various sizes and patterns. There were soldiers bedecked with golden armor, servants bearing betel nut, and many well-known and beautiful society girls. Many servants followed on foot, bearing an umbrella, whisks, different grades of precious jewels, and other paraphernalia befitting a royal reception. However, when after some time there was no sign of Ram, Bharat anxiously told to Hanuman, "I pray you are not exhibiting your frivolous monkey nature by joking with me." Hanuman then pointed to the distance where clouds of dust were being raised by the approaching monkeys. Just then, a far-off roaring came to be heard. When Hanuman suddenly sighted the Pushpaka chariot in the distance, he shouted, "Here comes Sri Ram!" A loud spontaneous cheer suddenly rose from the crowd as they too sighted the Pushpaka chariot, which appeared to be just like the full moon rising in the sky. Everyone respectfully got down from their chariots, elephants, and horses, as Bharata began worshipping Ram from a distance. With folded hands, Bharata recited prayers in glorification of Ram, and he offered water and other paraphernalia in worship. Finally, when Bharata could clearly see Ram glowing magnificently at the front of the Pushpaka chariot, he bowed down with great reverence. As the celestial airship landed, Bharata rushed forward and climbed onto the chariot to greet his older brother. Ram immediately got up from his seat to embrace Bharat, taking him on his lap. Bharat, his heart softened in ecstasy and his eyes full of tears, approached Lord Ramachandra and fell at his lotus feet with great ecstatic love. Lord Ramachandra saw that Bharat was much emaciated and heard that in his absence his brother was eating only barley cooked in the urine of a cow, covering his body with the bark of trees, wearing matted locks of hair, and lying on a mattress of kusha. The most merciful Lord Ram very much lamented this. Afterwards, Bharat greeted Lakshman and Sita, showering them with praise. He then greeted Sugriv by embracing him, saying, "Although we are four, you are now just like our fifth brother." Meanwhile, Ram approached his mother, Kaushalya, and lovingly clasped her feet. Then, one after another, Ram greeted Sumitra, Kaikeyi, and Vashishta, while all the other citizens came forward with folded hands to welcome him. Approached by Sita and Lakshman, Lord Ramachandra then offered his respectful obeisances unto the learned brahmanas and the elderly persons in the family, and all the citizens of Ayodhya offered their respectful obeisances unto the Lord. The citizens of Ayodhya, upon seeing their king return after a long absence, offered him flower garlands, waved their upper cloths, and danced in great jubilation. It's like that.
Thanks. Thereafter, Bharata came before Rama with Rama's wooden shoes in hand. While carefully placing the slippers upon Rama's lotus feet, Bharata said, "Here is the kingdom I have overseen in your absence. By your mercy, Ayodhya is flourishing, and the treasury, storehouses, and army have all increased tenfold. My duty is now over, and I hereby relinquish everything unto you." After offering the wooden shoes before Lord Ramachandra, Lord Bharata stood with folded hands, his eyes full of tears, and Lord Ramachandra bathed Bharata with tears while embracing him with both arms for a long time. After this, Rama ordered the Pushpaka chariot to return to its rightful owner, the god of wealth, Kuvera. Thus, the celestial vehicle ascended into the sky, heading toward the north. Then, as Rama sat at the feet of his spiritual master, Vashishta, Bharata came before him and requested, "My dear elder brother, please install yourself upon the royal throne without further delay, and resume a life of royal luxury." Lord Ramachandra then entered Ayodhya in the midst of a great festival. He was greeted on the road by the princely order, who showered his body with beautiful, fragrant flowers, while great personalities like Lord Brahma and other demigods glorified the activities of the Lord in great jubilation. The family priest, Vashishta, had Lord Ramachandra cleanly shaved, freeing him from his matted locks of hair. After bathing, Rama at last again dressed in royal style and was decorated with a garland and ornaments. The three mothers similarly adorned Sita, and the wives of the monkeys were similarly dressed and ornamented. Next, at Shatrughna's command, Sumantra came before Rama with a lavishly decorated chariot. Rama graciously mounted it, and Bharata took up the reins, while Shatrughna held the royal white umbrella. On either side of Rama stood Lakshman and Vibhishan, waving a fan and chamara, while from the sky the demigods and celestial rishis glorified Rama with carefully chosen words. As Rama proceeded toward Ayodhya, a huge procession followed him, as all the monkeys, appearing in human form, rode elephants. Thereafter, when Rama entered his capital, he saw how all the citizens had come out of their houses, lining the streets to welcome him. Men and women, children and the elderly gazed upon Rama as though they were getting back their lost lives. While waving their cots and jumping with excitement, the people shouted, "Our beloved prince has returned! All glories to Lord Ram, the maintainer of his devotees." Amid the playing of musicians and the chanting of Vedic hymns, Rama glanced lovingly over his subjects. Rama greeted his ministers and described to them his political alliances with the monkeys and Vibhishan. Thus he came to his father's palace. Rama ordered that his own palace be given for Sugriva's use. Bharata then took the monkey king by the hand and led him there. At Bharata's request, Jambavan, Hanuman, Gavaya, and Rishabha brought water from the 4 seas, while 500 powerful monkeys brought water from 500 sacred rivers. The vessels of water were then placed before Vashishta, and thereafter the rishi seated Rama and Sita upon a throne made of valuable jewels. Assisted by Vamadev, Jabali, Kashyapa, Katyayana, Suyajna, Gautama, and Vijaya rishis, Vashishta performed the bathing ceremony, with the first ablutions performed by the Brahmanas. Next, Rama was bathed by a virgin girl, followed by his minister, the leading warriors, and Vaishyas, one after another. After the final bathing, Vashishta ordered the 4 Lokapalas and the other chief demigods witnessing the coronation from the sky to sprinkle Rama with herbs. Then, as Rama sat upon a golden throne bedecked with valuable gems, Vashishta placed the royal crown upon his head and decorated his body with golden ornaments. The crown, formerly worn by all the kings in the Ikshvaku dynasty, was made by Lord Brahma, especially for the coronation of Vaivasvata Manu. At Indra's prompting, Vayu placed a garland made from 100 golden lotus flowers around Rama's neck and presented him with a celestial necklace of pearls and gems. Shatrughna held the royal umbrella over Rama's head, as Sugriva and Vibhishana fanned him from both sides. Thereafter, as Gandharvas sang and Apsaras danced in ecstasy, Rama gave in charity 100,000 cows, 300 million gold coins, and all varieties of precious jewels to the Brahmanas. Rama presented Sugriva with a celestial necklace and gave Angada a pair of bracelets adorned with diamonds and precious stones. Rama presented Sita a necklace given previously given to him by Vayu, along with many lavishly decorated dresses. Sita desired to present Hanuman with the gift as a token of her appreciation for all he had done for her. With this in mind, she unclasped the necklace Rama had given her and looked toward Rama questioningly. Understanding her intention, Rama requested Sita to present the necklace to Hanuman. Thus, she happily placed it around his neck. Thereafter, all the monkey chiefs were given valuable clothing and ornaments. In this way, Rama's coronation came to a successful conclusion. Completely satisfied at heart, the monkeys returned to their respective kingdoms, while Vibhishan returned to Lanka. When everyone had taken their leave, Rama said to Lakshman, "My dear brother, now that I have been installed upon the throne, I wish to install you as my heir apparent." Despite being urged repeatedly in this way, Lakshman remained silent, for he refused to accept the proposal. Rama could well understand the mind of Lakshman. Thus, he finally conferred the honor upon Bharat. Rama ruled the earth from his capital, Ayodhya, for 11,000 years. During that time, he performed many sacrifices, including 100 horse sacrifices. During the reign of Lord Rama, the forest, the river, the hills and mountains, the states, the 7 islands, and the 7 seas were all favorable in supplying the necessities of life for all living beings. All bodily and mental suffering, disease, old age, bereavement, lamentation, distress, fear, and fatigue were completely absent. There were no widows to lament the loss of their husbands, nor were there diseases or thieves. Indeed, even wild animals gave up their natural enmity and thus did not kill one another. All the citizens were fully righteous, always looking toward Rama as their Lord and Master. Beyond that, they saw Rama as their life and soul. Everyone lived for thousands of years and had thousands of sons. There was even no death for those who did not want it. All talk centered around Rama alone. Thus, the entire earth appeared as if transformed into the kingdom of God, Vaikuntha. Lava and Kusha then concluded their narration. Anyone who listens daily to this wonderful story, known as the Ramayana, will become free from all sinful reactions. This sacred narration grants prowess, longevity, and victory to those who subdue their passions and hear it with faith. The reader of this Ramayana, if a woman, will receive sons. If a king, will conquer the earth. If a traveler, will reach his destination. And if a sinful person, will be purified. Uttarakanda. Soon after Rama's coronation, all the great rishis came to Ayodhya to personally worship him and glorify his wonderful transcendental pastimes. The Sapta rishis, Vashishta, Kashyapa, Atri, Vishvamitra, Gautama, Jamadagni, and Bharadvaja, arrived at the royal palace, as did Kaushika, Kanva, Agastya, and Dhaumya. When the gatekeeper informed him that these exalted rishis had arrived, Rama had them escorted into the royal court and stood with folded hands to greet them. Rama arranged comfortable seats for the sages and then offered them ceremonial worship and innumerable cows and charity. When the rishis were seated at ease, Rama respectfully inquired of their welfare. The rishis said, "O Rama, you have certainly satisfied us by descending on earth to exhibit your magnanimous pastimes. Now that Ravana is dead, we feel relief and happiness, for he was a great impediment to the progressive welfare of the world. Indeed, not only Ravana, but also many others such as Kara, Marika, Kumbhakarna, Atikaya, Nikumba, and Kumbha were terrorizing all living beings. Thus, we are very grateful to you for destroying them. We are especially thankful that Indrajit is dead. There was no one comparable to Indrajit, even among the demigods, demons, and Rakshasas. Except for yourself and Lakshman, he could not be slain by anyone within the 3 worlds." Interrupting the sages, Rama curiously inquired, "O best of the rishis, why do you praise Indrajit even more than Kumbhakarna or Ravana? How is it that he became more powerful than his father and was able to defeat Indra, the king of heaven?" On behalf of the sages, Agastya replied by narrating the following history. Long ago, in the Satya Yuga, there lived a great Brahma rishi named Pulastya, who was the son of Lord Brahma. Once upon a time, Pulastya went to the ashram of the great sage Trinabandhu on the slopes of Mount Meru to perform severe austerities. Because of the scenic beauty of the celestial place, the Apsaras frequently came there. Thus, along with Drinabandhu's daughter, they would play, sing, and accompany themselves with musical instruments. It so happened that one day, while enjoying themselves in this way, the Apsaras unintentionally disrupted Pulastya's meditation. Becoming highly angered, the rishi cursed the girl, saying, "Whoever I see coming nearby again will become pregnant, simply by my glance." The Apsaras fearfully ran away, never daring to return to that place. The daughter of Srinabandhu, however, was not present that day and was unaware of the rishi's curse. Thus, the next day, when she went to play with her friends in the usual manner, she came within sight of Pulastya. Consequently, she soon found that she was pregnant, although without any apparent cause, and became extremely pale with fear. Returning home, she stood before her father, hanging her head in shame. Dinabandhu was quite surprised to see how his daughter's body had become transformed, and he anxiously inquired, "How has this happened, my child?" The girl replied, "I wandered near the ashrama of Pulastya in search of my friends, when suddenly I found myself to be pregnant. I do not know why." Dinabandhu then entered a trance of meditation, and by dint of his mystic vision, he was able to perceive how Pulastya's curse was the cause of his daughter's pregnancy. Dinabandhu then took his daughter to Pulastya and requested him to accept her as his wife. Since he was already inclined to have her, Pulastya agreed. Thus, from that time onward, Dinabandhu's daughter began serving him with great love and devotion. Later, after becoming pleased with his wife's service, Pulastya said, "I shall now give you a son who will be my equal, ensuring that my hereditary line will continue. Because you always listen to the Vedas while I am engaged in reciting them, your son's name will be Vishrava." Soon, Pulastya's wife gave birth to a son, and because the boy was pure and detached, he spent his time engaged in austerities. In consideration of Vishrava's exalted qualities, the great sage Bharadwaj later gave his daughter Idavida to him in marriage. Then, after some time, Vishrava desired to beget a son who would promote the spiritual welfare of the masses of people. Thereafter, an exalted son was born to Idavida. This child was given the name Vaishravana by the sages, who understood that in the future he would take the post of Kubera, the lord of wealth. When he grew up, Vaishravana began performing austerities, maintaining his body with only water. Gradually, Vaishravana reduced his intake to only air, and finally, he even stopped breathing. In this way, 1,000 years passed quickly, seeming like a single year. Lord Brahma became pleased with Vaishravana's austerities and appeared before him, accompanied by all the demigods. When offered a benediction, Vaishravana expressed his desire to become a Lokapala. Lord Brahma then replied, "Indeed, I was already prepared to appoint a fourth Lokapala. I therefore grant your wish. You may assume the post of Kubera, the Lord of Wealth, thus becoming equal in greatness to the three other Lokapalas, namely Yamaraj, Indra, and Varuna. Additionally, I shall award you a celestial vehicle befitting your exalted position. Here is the Pushpaka chariot." Lord Brahma departed, and because the universal grandsire had not designated a place of residence for him, Vaishravana went to his father, Vishrava. Vishrava said, "My dear son, you may reside at the city of Lanka, located on the Trikuta mountain." Vishvakarma built this place for the habitation of Rakshasas. However, Lanka is now vacant since the Rakshasas long ago fled in fear of Lord Vishnu and had taken up their residence in Rasatala. Following his father's order, Vaishravana took up residence at Lanka. In due course, because of his good rule, that place came to flourish and was filled with citizens known as the Nayartas. Now and then, Vaishravana would mount his chariot and visit his parents. Rama sat listening to Agastya's discourse with great pleasure. However, he again politely interrupted, saying, "While I'm anxious to hear the continuation of this story, I'm curious to understand some points. Under what circumstances had the Rakshasas previously come to inhabit Lanka? I've heard that the Rakshasas were originally born from the eyebrows of Pulastya. However, it now appears that their origin must be different. Who is the actual ancestor of the original Rakshasas? How powerful were they in comparison to Ravana? Why were they driven away from Lanka by Lord Vishnu and made to reside below the earth?" Agastya continued his narration in sweet words. In the beginning of the cosmic manifestation, Lord Brahma created the oceans and then the living entities. When the created beings, being tormented, became tormented by hunger and thirst, they approached Lord Brahma and asked him what they should do. While laughing heartily, Brahma replied, "You should protect Raksha, the ocean, by all means." Some of the created beings responded by saying, "We shall protect Raksha," while others said, "We shall eat Yaksha." Lord Brahma then proclaimed that the former group would be known as the Rakshasas and the latter as Yakshas. There were two leaders of the Rakshasas, namely Heti and Praheti. Praheti was naturally inclined toward virtue. Thus, he retired to the forest to perform austerities. Heti wanted to marry, and on his own initiative, married Bhaya, Yama's sister. Also being the sister of Kala, Bhaya was a most fearsome personality. Through her, Heti begot a son named Vidyutkesha. When Vidyutkesha grew up, Heti arranged his marriage to the daughter of Sandhya, named Salakatankata. Later on, Salakatankata gave birth to a son on the slopes of Mount Mandara. But since she had only desired to enjoy sex with her husband and not to bear a child, she abandoned the baby after delivery. When the neglected child began to cry, he was seen by Lord Shiva, who happened to be passing on his bull carrier along with his wife Parvati. At the request of the compassionate Uma, Lord Shiva made the child immediately grow up and benedicted him with immortality. Then, to further please his wife, Lord Shiva gave the child a flying city. Parvati also awarded a benediction to the entire Rakshasa race, saying, "Henceforth, the women of your dynasty will deliver their babies at the time of conception, and upon birth, the children will immediately grow up to become the size of the mother." After receiving these benedictions, Sukesha, the son of Salakatankata and Vidyutkesha, became very arrogant and began roaming at will in his airplane. Considering Sukesha's opulence, the Gandharva named Gramani gave his beautiful daughter Devavati to him in marriage. Thereafter, Sukesha begot 3 sons by Devavati, Malyavan, Sumali, and Mali. Knowing that their father had become powerful by obtaining benedictions, the 3 sons went to Mount Meru, determined to gain success by the performance of severe austerities. The severe penances of the 3 sons of Sukesha became fearful for all living entities. Lord Brahma appeared before the 3 brothers to fulfill their desires and make them desist from their austerities. Thus, when Lord Brahma offered them benedictions, the brothers replied, "O Lord, may we become long-lived and become so powerful that we will strike terror into the hearts of our enemies. Give us the ability to become invisible at will, and let us 3 always have love for each other." Lord Brahma gave his consent and departed. Due to their benedictions, Malyavan, Sumali, and Mali became so fearless that they began to harass the demigods and demons alike. Enlivened by their leader's prowess, the Rakshasas approached Vishvakarma in a group, requesting him to build them a place equal to the demigods. Vishvakarma informed the Rakshasas of Lanka, surrounded by golden walls, which he had previously constructed under the order of Indra. Then, at Vishvakarma's urging, the Rakshasas took up residence there. Soon thereafter, the Gandharva woman, Narmada, gave her 3 daughters in marriage to Malyavan, Sumali and Mali. Through his wife, Malyavan begot many children, including Virupaksha and Durmukha. The wife of Sumali gave birth to Prahasta, Akampana, Damraksha, Tuparshva, and Prahasa. Through his wife, Mali begot Anala, Anila, Hara, and Sampati, who became Vibhishan's 4 ministers. All these offspring became proud like their fathers and began to harass the demigods. Finally, the demigods and rishis went to Lord Shiva and complained that the descendants of Sukesha were practically driving them out of heaven. When the demigods and rishis requested Lord Shiva to kill the 3 Rakshasas, however, he replied, "Due to Lord Brahma's benedictions, the sons of Sukesha are immune to death at my hands. Therefore, I suggest you approach Lord Vishnu, the supreme infallible person." Thereafter, the demigods and rishis went to see Lord Vishnu, the master of everyone, and the supreme personality of Godhead. After offering their obeisances, the demigods prayed, "My dear Lord, we are your eternal servants, and you are our eternal master. Because we desire the welfare of all living entities, we are busily engaged in the management of universal affairs. O Lord, you are our only shelter. Thus we have come to inform you of our plight. The sons of Sukesha, named Malyavan, Sumali, and Mali, have become invincible by the benedictions of Lord Brahma and are harassing us greatly. Even Lord Shiva has refused to fight them. Thus, we are now forced to approach your lotus feet for protection. Lord Vishnu replied, My dear demigods and great rishis, do not fear. I know about Sukesha's sons. Because they have proudly overstepped the bounds of propriety, I have already decided to kill them. Pretty good story. I'm gonna read.
Sorry, I lost this. Okay, yes. Being thus restored to confidence, the demigods again offered prayers of glorification and departed for their respective abodes. Soon thereafter, Malyavan came to learn of Lord Vishnu's assurance to the demigods that he would kill him and his brothers. Malyavan went to consult with Sumali and Mali. Malyavan said, Since Lord Vishnu has already killed Hiranyakashipu, Kalanemi, and many other powerful demons, he must be exceedingly difficult to conquer. Sumali and Mali replied, There is no need for us to fear anyone, even Lord Vishnu. Indeed, Lord Vishnu has no personal enmity with us. He has simply been poisoned by the words of the demigods. Therefore, let us kill the demigods in retaliation, for they are our real enemies. Coming to this conclusion, all the Rakshasas left Lanka to fight with the demigods. While they were en route to heaven, however, many evil omens manifested, indicating the imminent destruction of the Rakshasas. When Lord Vishnu heard that Malyavan was leading an attack on the demigods, he quickly took up his Sharanga bow and other weapons and mounted the back of his carrier Garuda. As the Lord approached, part of the Rakshasas' army was blown away by the fierce wind generated by Garuda's flapping wings. Regardless, thousands of other Rakshasas took courage and surrounded Lord Vishnu, attacking him with innumerable weapons. With his Sharanga bow, the Lord soon dispersed the enemy soldiers by releasing showers of arrows that issued forth at the speed of the mind. After thousands of Rakshasas had fallen, mangled upon the battlefield, Lord Vishnu blew his transcendental conch shell, the Panchajanya. Upon hearing that terrible sound, the surviving Rakshasas began running away in fear. Sumali then angrily rushed forward, and with a shower of arrows appeared to check Lord Vishnu. This caused the Rakshasas behind him to become enlivened, and they rallied again. Elated at his success, Sumali roared with delight. Just then, however, Lord Vishnu cut off the head of Sumali's charioteer, making the horses carry him wildly away from the battlefield. Mali then rushed forward, piercing the Lord with thousands of arrows. However, without being the least bit pained, Lord Vishnu responded with his own volley of arrows, forcing Mali to retreat from the battlefield. While driving off Mali, Lord Vishnu cut down his flag, broke his bow, and killed his horses, depriving him of his chariot. Mali then grabbed his club and jumped to the ground. He rushed forward and violently struck Garuda on the forehead. Feeling acute pain, Garuda turned away from the blow. Thus Lord Vishnu was also forced to turn his back upon the enemy. Upon witnessing Mali's wonderful feat, the Rakshasa warriors roared with delight. However, hearing the Rakshasas' jubilant reaction, Lord Vishnu became enraged. Thus, even though facing backwards, he released his Sudarshan Chakra. The blazing disc then swiftly severed Mali's head. Upon seeing the death of their brother, Sumali and Malyavan became overwhelmed with grief and turned back toward Lanka. Thereafter, as the demigods came to congratulate Vishnu in great happiness, Garuda recovered and began dispersing the remaining Rakshasas by flapping his wings. Many of the Rakshasa soldiers thus fell from the sky into the sea. Upon seeing their plight, Malyavan turned back and challenged, O Vishnu, you appear to be ignorant of the rules of combat, for you are attacking those who have given up their intent to fight. Please stay on the battlefield a while longer, so I may punish you for your wicked behavior. Lord Narayana replied, Your accusation is unjust. I am merely making good my promise to give protection to the demigods, and I shall keep my promise at all costs. At this, Malyavan hurled a great spear. However, when it pierced his chest, Lord Vishnu merely pulled it out and threw it back at the Rakshasa. When the spear hit Malyavan's chest, it shattered the Rakshasa's armor, making him faint on his chariot. Malyavan, however, soon recovered and quickly hurled a club that hit the Lord's chest. Then, coming very close by, Malyavan struck Lord Vishnu on the chest with his mighty fist and began beating Garuda. The enraged Garuda then quickly drove Malyavan away with a blast of air from his wings. Seeing his brother's plight, Sumali fled back toward Lanka with the ashamed Malyavan following. Thereafter, because of their fear of Lord Vishnu, the Rakshasas gave up their residence in Lanka and entered the nether regions. Agastya continued, Malyavan, Sumali, and Mali were more powerful than Ravana and the other Rakshasas that were killed by you. However, since the Rakshasas you faced in battle were all descendants of Pulastya, they were incomparably strong. Therefore, my dear Rama, it can only be concluded that you are none other than Lord Narayana himself, for no one else could have killed these Rakshasas. Agastya continued, while Sumali wandered throughout the netherworld in fear of Lord Vishnu, Vaishravana took up his residence at Lanka under his father's order. Sometime later, Sumali took his beautiful daughter with him and left the lower regions to wander the earth in search of a suitable husband for her. It so happened that one day Sumali saw Vaishravana flying overhead in his Pushpaka chariot. Sumali was struck with wonder upon seeing the celestial vehicle. Soon he returned to the nether regions to ponder the fate of the Rakshasa race's welfare. Then, coming to a firm decision, Sumali called for his daughter Kaikasi and requested her to accept Vishrava as her husband. Thereafter, Kaikasi obediently went to Vishrava's residence and stood shyly before him, her head bent downward as she scratched the ground with her toes. It happened that Vaishrava was in the midst of performing a horse sacrifice, and Kaikasi did not realize that she had approached at an inauspicious time. Still, the magnanimous sage inquired, My dear young girl, who are you? What is your purpose in coming here? Kaikasi replied, I am the daughter of Sumali, and my name is Kaikasi. Whatever else you may wish to know, I request that you ascertain by your spiritual prowess. Vaishrava then entered a trance of meditation, and after reading Kaikashi's mind, he said, I can understand that you desire to receive sons from me. Your wish may be granted, but because you have approached me at an inauspicious time, your sons will become fierce Rakshasas. Kaikasi replied, I do not wish to have such sons from you, therefore please be merciful unto me. Vishrava then granted, as a concession, your youngest son will come to be famous as a pious man. In due course of time, Kaikasi gave birth to a hideous child with 10 heads and 20 arms, a huge mouth, and long teeth. At the time of his birth, the earth trembled, meteors fell from the sky, and fierce winds blew, bringing terror to the hearts of all living beings. Because of his 10 heads, Vishrava named the child Dashagriva. Then after some time, Kumbhakarna was born. The child possessed the largest body on earth. After Kumbhakarna came a daughter named Shurpanaka, who had a very ugly face. The last child was Vibhishana. When this noble son was born, the demigods uttered exclamations of joy and showered down flowers from heaven. Thereafter, Kumbhakarna wandered all over the universe, devouring rishis, while Vibhishana engaged himself in studying the Vedas. Then one day, Kuvera came to see his father while riding in the Pushpaka chariot. When Kaikasi saw Vaishravana, she urged her own son Dashagriva to become as powerful and glorious as his half-brother. Hearing these words from his mother, Dashagriva became envious of Kuvera, vowing to become greater than him in all respects. Then, with his mind fixed on performing severe austerities, Dashagriva set out for the holy site of Gokarna, along with his younger brothers. Dashagriva began executing unprecedented austerities. Because of this, Lord Brahma became very pleased with him and his brothers. At this time, Rama again interrupted politely, saying, "O foremost of rishis, please describe in detail exactly what austerities the three brothers performed." Agastya replied, "Kumbhakarna lit fires all around him during the heat of summer, while in the winter he remained submerged in cold water. In this way, he passed 10,000 years without wavering from his determination. Vibhishana stood on one leg for 5,000 years, and for another 5,000 years he kept his arms above his head while worshipping the sun god. Dashagriva went without food for the entire 10,000 years, and at the end of each 1,000-year period, gave one of his heads as an offering into the sacrificial fire. Indeed, it was just when Dashagriva was about to offer his last head in sacrifice that Lord Brahma appeared to reward him for his austerities. When he saw Lord Brahma standing before him, Dashagriva bowed down with great respect. Then, when Lord Brahma urged him to accept a benediction, Dashagriva replied in a voice choked with joy, "O my Lord, I only have one fear, and that is death. Therefore, please fulfill my desire for granting me the boon of immortality." However, Lord Brahma replied, "It is not possible for anyone within the material creation to have absolute immortality. Even I shall one day have to die. Thus, I request you to ask for something else." Dashagriva begged, "Please grant me immunity from death at the hands of the Nagas, Yakshas, Daityas, Danavas, Rakshasas, and demigods. I do not require immunity from others like human beings and animals, for I consider them to be no more of a threat than the straw in the street." Lord Brahma then declared, "I shall grant you all that you have asked for. Likewise, the heads you previously offered in sacrifice, will be restored. I will also give you one more benediction, allowing you to assume any form you like, simply by willing." Lord Brahma then said to Vibhishana, "You may also accept a benediction from me according to your desire." Vibhishana replied, "My dear Lord, since you are pleased with me, the goal of my life has already been achieved. My only wish is that my mind may always remain steadily fixed upon the path of virtue, even amidst the greatest difficulties. In addition, if you so desire, please grant that the knowledge of the Brahmastra appear to me upon command, even though untaught." Being very pleased, Lord Brahma replied, "Since you are by nature inclined toward righteousness, although born a Rakshasa, I shall grant you immortality on the level of the chief demigods." Next, when Lord Brahma was about to offer Kumbhakarna a benediction, all the demigods accompanying him pleaded with folded hands, "This Rakshasa is evil-minded. He has already devoured 7 apsaras and 10 attendants of Indra, along with numerous rishis and human beings. His only business is to terrorize the entire universe. Since he has already created so much havoc without any benediction, we think that after he receives benedictions from you, he will surely devour the 3 worlds. O Lord, we request that you somehow cast a spell of delusion over Kumbhakarna on the pretext of granting a benediction." After carefully considering the demigod's request, Lord Brahma mentally summoned his consort, the goddess of Saraswati, who came to his side. When the goddess inquired, "Of what service can I be, O Lord?" Brahma replied, "I want you to become the speech within Kumbhakarna's mouth." Thus it so happened that when Lord Brahma requested Kumbhakarna to take a benediction, the gigantic Rakshasa replied, "If you wish to fulfill my desire, then allow me to sleep for many, many years." Lord Brahma immediately replied, "Let it be so."
Thank you very much, Priya Kishori, and everybody, all the kids, for reading. And if you have any quick realizations, please share. How did you feel? Anushri, what was your experience?
It was very nice to read it out loud instead of just listening to others as well, and listening to others, but I liked reading it out loud as well.
Yeah, I heard in Keshav Bharati Magrat's lecture, you brought up a very important point. He also mentioned how reading loudly removes all the doubts and the anarthas we have in our heart. So, yeah, that's true, Anushri. So, thank you all, dear youth team, for the wonderful job. And we hope to hear from you next year also. And thank you so much. And thanks to Pavani Bhakti Mataji also. And to Giridhar for the broadcast